I'm gonna be honest with you. Wish is not the worst movie Disney's ever made. Which is surprising since the movie came out in 2023, and a lot of people seem to mock this film as Disney's worst. However, there is something that rubs me the wrong way about it. Visually, Wish is constantly reaching for something special. It wants to combine watercolor storybooks with modern computer animation. It wants to celebrate 100 years of Disney history. It wants to tell a story about creativity, dreams, power, and ordinary people reclaiming control over their futures. Those are all interesting ideas. But the more Wish tries to represent everything Disney has ever been, the less it manages to become something memorable on its own. The animation reaches the stars, while the storytelling barely leaves the ground. So today on the Palooza, we're going to talk about why Wish was visually engaging, but narratively underwhelming as a Disney anniversary movie. And why its biggest problem is not that it lacks ideas, is that it has too many ideas and never develops any of them fair enough. Wish follows a young girl named Asha living in the kingdom of Rosas, which is ruled by King Magnifico. People travel to Rosas from all over the world to give them, the king, the greatest wish they have. Once they surrender that wish, they forget what it was for, and then Magnifico promises that he may someday grant it, which is kind of interesting. You give away the dream that defines you, you forget who you are, what you wanted, and then trust one powerful person to decide whether you deserve to receive it back. It's like me giving up the idea of me being president of the United States while making the mandate that every Friday be pizza day and every family get a pizza on their doorstep. There is an entire movie hiding in that concept. It could be about authority. It could even be about elitism. It could be about the danger of allowing one charismatic leader to control everybody's hopes. It could even work as an allegory for a major creative company deciding which artists, ideas, and stories are valuable enough to be supported. And at certain moments, Wish seems self-aware of these possibilities. The problem is that it rarely explores them beyond the most basic level. The strongest part of Wish is the idea that surrendering your wish also means surrendering a part of yourself. The citizens of Rosa appear happy, but many of them seem incomplete. They no longer remember their ambitions or what motivates them. Magnifico presents this as a service. He argues that some dreams are too dangerous, unrealistic, or disruptive to be returned. And this is where the movie could have been genuinely challenging, because Magnifico's argument is obviously controlling, but it isn't completely nonsensical. Should every wish be granted? What happens when one person's dream threatens somebody else? Does protecting people from failure also prevent them from growing? And who gets to decide which dreams are worthy? Those questions are much more interesting than saying the king is bad because he stole everybody's wishes. Unfortunately, the movie eventually simplifies Magnifico so dramatically that the moral conflict becomes much less interesting. Instead of allowing him to remain a charming but deeply controlling leader, he becomes a growing, green Disney villain. And once that happens, the complexity disappears. But before we get to Magnifico's villain transformation, we need to talk about the biggest contradiction in the movie. What does Wish actually believe a wish is? Asha eventually argues that people should get their wishes back so they can work towards making those dreams into a reality. That's a solid message. You should not wait for a powerful person to approve your purpose. Even when your dream does not come true exactly as imagined, pursuing it still gives you a life direction. The movie also introduces the character Star, a magical being capable of changing the world around it. Animals can speak, plants can move, magic suddenly appears everywhere. The movie wants to say that ordinary people must work together to create change, but it also solves many immediate problems by dropping an adorable magical star into the story. And that creates some confusion. If the magic is accessible, what separates Magnifico from everybody else? How did he become the only person capable of mastering it? Can anybody learn magic? Could the citizens eventually develop the same abilities? The movie gestures this idea that everybody contains some form of stardust or creative power, but the rules remain extremely vague. We're told that people should take ownership of their dreams, but we're not shown enough of who they were before they disappeared. And then that weakens the emotional payoff. You do have moments in Wish where it almost feels like it's trying to tell an allegorical story about the creation of Disney itself. Asha inspires people through imagination. Star resembles the kind of simple, expressive mascot character Disney has built identity around. The movie repeatedly emphasizes people working towards their dreams rather than waiting for permission. I mean, interpret this as reflecting Walt and Roy Disney building a studio around imagination, risk, and artistic ambition. Asha could represent the animator, which is almost ham-fisted when we literally see her showing Magnifico a hand-drawn animation she made. Magnifico could even represent the danger of a creative institution becoming so protective of its legacy that it begins controlling creativity rather than encouraging it. This would have been a fascinating anniversary story, but Wish never really commits to that interpretation. Instead, it surrounds the audience with references, familiar character types, and reminders of old Disney animated movies. And at certain points, the film feels like it's telling two different stories. One is an ambitious story about creativity, ownership, and the origins of the Disney spirit. And the other is a collection of familiar Disney archetypes assembled to remind us that the company is 100 years old. And those two stories keep fighting for space. This leads to the real problem of Wish. It relies so heavily on Disney's past that it never develops a strong identity of its own. The references are everywhere. Asha's group of friends appear designed to evoke the Seven Dwarfs. Animals start to speak. There's visual references to classic storybooks, magical wishes, familiar character poses, and past Disney films. Even Mary Poppins catches shade. And she's not even an animated character.
The perfect nanny for your horrible children. Popping this one!
I mean, what's the point of Mary Poppins catching shade here? Star feels deliberately designed as a mascot. In a lot of ways, it's almost like they were from the 1920s attempting to design an animated character with those simple designs. In a lot of ways, could be like a prototype Mickey Mouse minus the ears. There are references in the credits, there are references in the music, there are references hidden in the background. This movie's so busy by asking us to recognize Disney history that I eventually started wondering what movies it's forgotten. At one point I'm watching the credits and I noticed that the Rescuers didn't get any sort of mention. And don't get me wrong, in past Disney animated films, references are fun. Watching Aladdin, I always loved seeing the genie turn into Pinocchio because it kind of represented that character being this omnipotent, powerful being. And it does make you feel rewarded sometimes. But nostalgia shouldn't support the story nor substitute for a new one. The best Disney movies did not become classics because they constantly reminded audiences of previous Disney movies. They became classics because they created characters, worlds, songs, and emotional moments that people wanted to remember. It's built in reverse. It begins with the question, how do we celebrate 100 years of Disney, and then tries to construct a story around the celebration. That makes it feel less like the beginning of a new Disney classic, and more like a corporate anniversary presentation with a plot attached to it. I mean, at that point, you could have just made a House of Mouse special with a movie in between as like the little introductory shorts. Now granted, I did say it was a mixed bag, and this is where I'm going to be giving it credit. It is nice to look at. The visual approach tries to combine computer animation with the appearance of watercolor paintings and illustrated storybooks. I do know the filmmakers specifically adopted the same 2.55 by 1 widescreen aspect ratio that was used in Sleeping Beauty to give Wish a grand, cinematic fairy tale feel. The backgrounds are soft, textured, and deliberately theatrical. The kingdom of Rosas has warm colors, detailed architecture, and a strong Mediterranean-inspired atmosphere. There are moments where the characters appear to exist inside an animated illustration rather than a conventional computer-generated environment. And that's an exciting direction for Disney, because at one point there was a short called Paperman, and it seemed like it directly took that style and incorporated it into the film. After years of animated films pursuing increased polished surfaces and realistic lighting, Wish at least attempts to reconnect modern audiences to Disney animation with the illustrated roots. Not every shot completely sells this combination, though. Occasionally, the characters can appear flatter or less integrated with the backgrounds than intended. But I would rather see Disney attempt a distinct visual style then release another technically impressive movie that looks interchangeable with everything else. The animation team is clearly trying to honor Disney's history while moving the studio's visual language forward. The story does not give the artistry enough emotional weight. There's a strange imbalance. The images tell us what we're watching as this major Disney event, and then the writing feels like a collection of first draft ideas. Let's talk about Asha. She's likable, caring, nervous, awkward, and determined to help her family. But she also falls into a personality type Disney has used fairly repeatedly in the last couple years, the quirky, overly expressive, socially awkward heroine. She's adorkable. That personality can work. Rapunzel, Anna, and Mirabelle all contain the same version of that energy, but their quirks are connected to their specific circumstances. Rapunzel was isolated in a tower. Anna grew up desperate for connection. Mirabelle often felt overlooked with an extraordinary family. With Asha, the awkwardness sometimes feels like a character trait developed from her life and more like a default personality setting for a modern Disney protagonist. She has strong motivation, helping her grandfather, Sabino, receive his wish on his 100th birthday. And trust me, you think you hear it once, but the movie constantly reminds you that it's his 100th year birthday.
Man who turns 100 years old today.
100 today, and
He's 100 years old.
I mean, yes, we understand this movie is a anniversary of Disney creating a studio, 100 years. And then you got this character telling everybody he is 100 years old. It does not get old, does not get repetitive. And in fact, it's one of the greatest aspects to remind people of that fact over and over and over and over and over again. But beyond her desire to help him and free the wishes, Anna's personality and ambition remain somewhat underdeveloped. The movie hints that she may represent an artist or storyteller who can often inspire others, especially since it seems like she's the first traditional animator in history to know what a keyframe is. However, it never really explores the dimension deeply enough. King Magnifico is such an underwhelming mixed bag of cliché and characteristics of other villains we've seen before, and none of them seem to fit. Early in the movie, he's charismatic, theatrical, insecure, and controlling. He survived hardship and built Rosas as a place where people could feel safe. The backstory creates the possibility that his obsession with controlling wishes comes from fear. Maybe he believes uncertainty always leads to destruction. Maybe genuinely believes that people are safer when someone stronger is making decisions for them. That could have made him a compelling antagonist, but the transformation happens too quickly. Once he uses forbidden magic, his personality becomes less nuanced, and his powers mostly manifest through this green smoke, glowing hands, and exaggerated villain behavior. For a character presented as one of the world's greatest sorcerers, we don't see enough inventive magic. It's just these green hands. At least Jafar turned people into yarn, and even the evil queen from Snow White, a movie you seem to yearn for so much, had a cooler transformation than him. He becomes visually louder while becoming narratively simpler. And that is a shame because Chris Pine's performance has plenty of energy. The movie just rushes him from questionable leader to obvious monster because the movie needs a traditional villain for its climax. The songs are another mixed bag. There are strong voices and energetic arrangements, but several numbers feel like dialogue placed over music rather than lyrics that naturally build towards an emotional release. Lin-Manuel Miranda's style is often conversational, but his strongest songs still use rhythm, internal rhyme, character perspective, and escalation to create movement. Some of the songs in Wish sound like characters are trying to fit exposition into a melody. The world communicates information, but they don't always create emotion. You got this song Wish, clearly designed to be this central anthem, and Ariana DeBose performs it with conviction. But the movie seems so determined to create an instantly iconic Disney song that you can feel the effort, but then at times it's like the songwriters are trying to deconstruct the I Want Mars songs from the other Disney princesses, that it kind of reads like a thesis rather than a song from a fairy tale Disney movie. As a little experiment, I'm going to read out the lyrics right now to give you an idea of what I mean. So this is from the song The Wish. Asha says, "Isn't truth supposed to set you free? Well, why do I feel so weighed down by it? If I could show them everything I've seen, open their eyes to all the lies then, would they change their minds like I did? But when I speak, they tell me sit down. But how can I when I've already started running? Oh, this is where I've been, but this is not where I belong. And I may be young, but I know I'm not wrong. So I look at the stars to guide me, and they throw caution to every warning sign. If knowing what it could be is what drives me, then let me be the first to stand in line." I don't know, something about that just feels so technical, like not even really a thesis, but more like a opening to a political rally. They're not unlistenable. They're inconsistent. Much like the movie itself, they often feel approximations of familiar Disney ingredients, rather than expressions that could only belong to these characters. By the end, I feel like Wish contained two different movies. The first movie is potentially creative Allegory about dreams, artistic ownership, collective action, and the creation of something representing the Disney legacy. The movie could have examined why people create, what institutions owe their animations and their artists, and what happens when protecting a legacy becomes more important than allowing new ideas to grow. The second movie is this deliberately primitive fairy tale assembled from character arcs, musical cues, mascots, villains, talking animals, and references Disney has established over the last century. And neither approach is automatically bad, but the film never finds a satisfying way to combine them. The anniversary references distract from the original ideas. The original ideas are not developed enough to justify the anniversary symbolism. And the result is a movie that frequently seems more meaningful than it actually is. Overall, Wish is a mixed bag. It has engaging animation, attractive environments, strong vocal performances, and a premise with real thematic possibility. I admire the attempt to reconnect computer animation with Disney's storybook heritage. I like the idea of a kingdom being built around surrendered dreams. And I like the possibility that Asha and Star represent creativity inspiring an entire community. But the storytelling is too thin, the world building is too vague, the villain arc is too rushed, and the nostalgia is too aggressive. Wish is made from cliches, but there are moments when you see a more original idea try and escape from underneath them. That's why I can't really say it's terrible. I mean, it's watchable, visually pleasant. It occasionally contains something interesting, at least something you can show your kids while they're being babysat or something. But from a movie celebrating 100 years of Disney storytelling, middle of the road feels like a major disappointment. The animation tries to honor the past while suggesting a possible future. The story is too afraid to stop looking back. And maybe that is the most revealing thing about Wish. It tells the characters to reclaim their dreams and create something new, while the movie itself is trapped within the Disney memories. But what do you think? Was Wish unfairly criticized, or did Disney's 100th anniversary movie rely too heavily on nostalgia? Do you enjoy the visual style? And do you think King Magnifico could have been a stronger villain with more development? Let me know in the comments. And subscribe to my channel for more Cartoon Palooza reviews, animation news, and discussions about the movies that worked, the movies that failed, and the movies that had all the right ingredients but never figured out the recipe. I'm Joey.T.Cartoon.P, and thanks for watching this review on the Cartoon Palooza.